Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying. Ethics very often comes last, but it's a very important topic, and after you have worked hard on and heard a lot about science today and how to achieve progress and achieve new treatments, we want to talk now about another aspect that you should consider when you want to be successful. And of course, we come very much from the area of medicines development, where we have a lot of experience with larger molecules, of course, about what makes it more or less successful. And as you know, we have a big risk of failures in medicines development. So there were a lot of different concepts why we think, where companies have tried to improve the chances, maximize the chances for success. And the very first one was probably in the 80s, the attempts to do outsourcing. Then we had the biotech period where a lot of companies found out that biotech companies have lots of good ideas. First, they acquired them, then they started to cooperate with them. And I think the latest development is now the engagement of patients as the parties concerned and people with very, very particular and extremely relevant insight in what is in fact required when we develop new treatments. So my name is Ingrid Klingmann. I am a physician, a clinical pharmacologist, and specialized in general medicine. I've spent my professional life mostly in medicines development from a scientific point of view, but I realized also very early, coming really from the physicians, the treating physician side, that ethics in fact plays a very important role and that the ethical conditions in medicines development still need in daily life a lot of attention and improvement. And over the years, it became also more and more obvious that the involvement of patients into these considerations has many different facets. Of course, they are the subjects in our clinical trials and how to deal them as subjects in our trials, participants in our trials. Needs, of course, a lot of attention, and informed consent is a very important aspect there, which we still have not managed yet to do really perfectly well. But over time, it became also more and more clear that patients are, in fact, very, very important and helpful when they find a way to really get heard and really find a way to be able to contribute meaningfully. A big hurdle on that is that a lot of patients, or most patients, do not speak our research language, our development language, our pharma language, and therefore it's quite difficult for them to express them in a meaningful way. On the other hand, we have seen more and more that patients have made very large efforts and strong efforts to improve that, and we will hear about that in more detail also during that session. So let's see. The green. Too big. So I have a quite, how to say, provocative title. I have called the presentations Kill Patient Centricity, the ethical requirements to involve patients as partners. I had hoped that with that I would have more people here in the room and that perhaps more people would like to know about that, why I make that proposal. Now, in fact, patient centricity is in. Everybody talks about patient centricity. When you talk with insurance companies, when you talk with healthcare systems, when you talk with pharma companies, patient centricity is what everybody does. When you come to the airport in Brussels, arriving in Brussels, you find a big, no, you found it's now gone, fortunately, but you find a large advertisement from UCB, inspired by patients, driven by science. I could be as tired as I wanted to be. I live in Brussels. That really raised my blood pressure. I didn't like that at all, and I tell you in a minute why. AstraZeneca says that science and patients, the heart of everything we do. Sanofi is saying we are a global integrated healthcare leader focused on patient needs. So everybody talks about it. That is really what is required. In reality, It looks more like that in many cases. No? The patient is there, but completely unable to really express him or herself, get heard, but everybody feels great to see the patient in the room and being able to say, we included the patient in our discussion. Now, the pharma companies have meanwhile developed really in different ways, very comprehensive definitions of patient centricity. Sanofi, for example, has this input and understanding, solutions and outcomes, and especially also for their own employees, a culture and community, how to make their own employees think more reliably and permanently about the importance of patients. AstraZeneca has written a very nice article explaining what they consider under as patient centricity, and they say putting the patient first in an open and sustained engagement of the patient to respectfully and compassionately achieve the best experience and outcome for that person and their family. That is quite comprehensive, and I think really gives a nice flavor of what it could be. On the other hand, we have also different type of, very many different type of initiatives. So the FDA, for example, the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, organized 24 sessions in different indications to hear directly from patients and caregivers about the impact of the disease on their daily lives and goals. So we listen to you. The Center for Devices and Radiological Health released a guidance in 2015 on how patient input might inform benefit-risk assessments in pre-market applications for medical devices. So this attitude of, we listen to you, we care for you, that is very much what most people think when they hear about patient centricity. But let's be clear, new medicines are not consumables. No, we are not doing market research here. We are not there to find out what the patients want and do this because we want to make sure that we sell as much as possible to them. We have an obligation to make patients, give patients better lives. So in developing medicines and medical devices, we fulfill existential needs and have to be clear about that, that this is a very different environment. There has been a lot of achievement. We have achieved a much broader interest than only a few years ago in patient needs when developing new treatments, and many initiatives, and we will hear about several of them, drive this spirit. Although there is not a consistent understanding of what it really is, and also not yet a true belief in its benefits. There is lots of demand for measurement, whether there is really a positive impact of making all these efforts in patient engagement or not. The fact is that R&D now in our lives is a commercial business and has to follow market rules because our society is not willing to invest and take the risk to develop new treatments with all the failure rates that we have, etc. This is not a public-funded environment that is left to industry, to the commercial world, and that, of course, by itself gives a conflict. But working on human needs has a special ethical dimension. We need to move from a paternalistic approach towards an understanding of our ethical obligation to engage and enable patients to participate really in the decision-making process on fulfilling their needs. We need to not just find out about what they want, but we really need to get them involved as participating partners in that process. And of course, there are many different occasions, many different ways, and we will hear about that later in that session. Now, there are fundamental ethical requirements why we have to do that. This is not only because we want to be good but or feel good but and have a better outcome, but it's also this ethical requirements that we have to fulfill, and that starts with the UN, the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights. And there, the Article 5 says, the autonomy of persons to make decisions while taking responsibility for those decisions and respecting the autonomy of others is to be respected. For persons who are not capable of exercising autonomy, special measures have to be taken to protect their rights and interests. So we are obliged as a fundamental, basic, fundamental right, human right, the autonomy and the right for self-determination. The newest version of the Declaration of Helsinki says in Article 7 that medical research is subject to ethical standards that promote and ensure respect for all human subjects and protect their health and rights. So how do we achieve respect? What does this mean in practical terms? And in Article 9 it says, it's the duty of physicians who are involved in medical research to protect the life, health, dignity, integrity, right to self-determination, privacy, confidentiality, etc. of personal information of research subjects. So we have an ethical obligation also from the Declaration of Helsinki. And for me, the latest very interesting work in that aspect was the work of CIOMS, of the Council of International Organization of Medical Sciences, which works in collaboration with WHO. They released renewed guidelines, revised their international ethical guidelines in 2016, and have 23 or 24 different guidelines on different aspects. And guideline number 1 talks about the scientific and social value and respect for rights. Now, the social value is the ethical justification for undertaking health-related research involving human subjects is its scientific and social value. The prospect of generating the knowledge and the means necessary to protect and promote people's health. Now, who is better able to do that than the patients themselves? They know best what they need and what they want. But what it also says is that patients, health professionals, researchers, policymakers, public health officials, pharmaceutical companies and others rely on the results of the research for activities and decisions that impact individual and public health, welfare, and the use of limited resources. We are all sitting in the same boat. We can only do it together. We have to do it together. And it continues. Therefore, researchers, sponsors, research ethics committees, health authorities must ensure that proposed studies are scientifically sound, we all heard about that, built on an adequate prior knowledge base and are likely to generate valuable information. But the data, the knowledge base that we have to deal with and to integrate is not only the science. It is also what the patients have as a knowledge when they live with a disease, what works for them, what does not work, what they need, and what increases their quality of life. So also scientific and social value are the fundamental justification for undertaking research. Researchers, sponsors, research ethics committees, and health authorities have a moral obligation to ensure that all research is carried out in ways that uphold human rights and respect, again, protect and are fair to study participants and the communities in which the research is conducted. Scientific and social value cannot legitimate subjects, study participants, or host communities to mistreatment or injustice. So it's both. We need to have the social and the scientific value that needs to be achieved. So in addition to these guidelines, the key sentences, there are commentaries. This is really helpful in these science guidelines. So some that are particularly relevant for us is that although the social value of research is a necessary condition for its ethical acceptability, it is not sufficient. All research with humans must be carried out in ways that shows respect and concern for the rights and welfare of individual participants and communities in which it is carried out. So again, this question of respect, and respect means not only I care for you, I do something for you, be quiet, everything will be fine, we know better. It is really helping them to get included, the patients to get included here. And another recommendation is research must also be sensitive to issues of justice and fairness. This concern is manifest in choosing whose health needs are investigated, how risks and burdens have to be handled. And there's a seventh guideline that is also specifically relevant for our context here, and this is on community engagement. This is a quite short text. It says, researchers, sponsors, health authorities, and relevant institutions should engage potential participants and communities in a meaningful participatory process that involves them in an early and sustained manner in the design, development, implementation, design of the informed consent, etc., and in the dissemination of its results. So we have to engage community if we want to fulfill our ethical obligations here. So proactive and sustained engagement with the communities from which participants will be invited to participate is a way of showing respect for them. Community engagement is also valuable for the contribution it can make to the successful conduct of the research. If you get them into the project, if you learn from them what is really relevant for them, what is really making them interested and supportive, can have a will have a very big impact on the success. It helps to ensure the ethical and social value and outcome of proposed research. Now, we know that patients have meanwhile also started their own initiatives. There are a lot of initiatives from different patient organizations. They create their own registries, they create even their own drug development processes, they raise money, they advise pharma companies. Patients have learned a lot, have formed groups that are able to do that, but it's still the minority. But what this last commentary he says is that it is really important that if such an initiative occurs and if it's well done, it's really important that we take that into consideration as researchers, that we are able to work with these people who do that. And some of the examples, one you see here from the parent project Muscular Dystrophy, the PPMD. This is a community that has really by themselves learned a lot and in the meantime enables FDA to develop their guidance based on information and knowledge that is provided by the patient organization. So, in conclusion, it's time for partnership. It's time to get rid of the term patient centricity, because this gives much room for misunderstanding of the concept and an alibi for paternalism. It's time for a wholehearted paradigm shift. We should use the term patient engagement, because engagement means it's self-explanatory. It signals active collaboration, partnership, striving for common goals, active contribution from patients, joint opinion building, and even joint decision making wherever possible. And in fact, it happens already in many initiatives, and it works. We will hear examples where we can show that it works, and that ultimately, if we get this additional impact and really take it seriously, there are very interesting and successful outcomes. And it's now my big pleasure to present the first speaker this evening. This is, after me, sorry, this is David Harry. He is from the European AIDS Treatment Group and the Positive Council in Switzerland. David, you can read his biography in the book here, in the program. David is, since many, many years, a very important activist in the sense that he has understood how important it is to learn to speak with industry, to learn to speak with regulatory authorities, and find a way to communicate on the level of the researchers and regulators to get heard and to be able to really reliably and with let's say, good background and acceptability, high acceptability, that the lectures that he's giving, the points that he has to raise, that they get heard. And we all learned a lot from David, and it's my pleasure, David, to tell us how it works from a patient perspective.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Ingrid.